Part 1. The moon was quiet as it always was. No wind, no birds, no voices. Just the soft hum of machines and the slow footsteps of a lone technician walking through the long, silver corridors of the lunar deep space listening post. His name was Leo Grant, and he had spent the last 3 years staring at screens, listening to the silence between stars. Most days nothing happened, but today was different. Leo rubbed his tired eyes and leaned closer to the main console. A strange signal had popped up an hour ago, faint, repeating, and oddly structured. It wasn't random noise like solar flares or pulsar bursts. This one had rhythm. It pulsed every 17.3 seconds like a heartbeat buried in static. He'd flagged it automatically as protocol required, but something about it made him stay. He replayed the clip again and again, slowing it down, stretching the sound into something almost musical. He called Maya Ellis over the comms. She was the station's linguist, one of the few people who could make sense of patterns in alien-like data. "Maya," he said, voice low, "you need to see this." She arrived 10 minutes later, her boots clicking against the metal floor. Her dark hair was tied back, and her eyes were sharp behind thin glasses. She listened to the signal once, then twice, then sat down without a word. "It's not natural," she murmured. "There's structure here. Syntax, maybe?" Leo nodded. "I ran it through the standard decoders. Nothing matched. But when I fed it into the new neural parser, the one you helped build, it started pulling out symbols. Not letters, but mathematical constants. Pi, the golden ratio. Prime numbers." Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard. She linked the signal to the station's deep learning AI, a system nicknamed Echo, for its ability to mimic and interpret unknown languages. Within minutes, Echo began translating, not into words but into coordinates, a set of numbers that pointed far beyond the orbit of Neptune, into a patch of space astronomers had labeled Void Sector 9. Officially, it was empty. No stars, no planets, not even dust clouds worth noting. "This doesn't make sense," Maya said. "Why would someone send a message pointing to nothing?" Leo didn't answer right away. He stared at the star map on the wall screen, watching the blinking dot that marked the coordinates. "Unless it's not nothing," he said slowly. "Unless they don't want us to know it's there." They knew they were breaking rules by digging deeper. Protocol said any unknown signal had to be reported to Earth Command immediately, but Earth Command would bury it under layers of bureaucracy, classify it, and forget it for years. Leo and Maya had seen it happen before. This felt too important to wait. They decided to go to Dr. Paul Dawson. He was retired, living in a small habitat near the crater Tycho, but he'd once led the entire Deep Space Research Division. If anyone could help them understand what they'd found, it was him. Paul was 72, with a thick beard and a mind that never slowed down. He listened to the recording while sipping synthetic coffee, his eyes narrowing with every second. When it ended, he was silent for a full minute. Then he said, "This isn't just a beacon. It's an invitation, or a warning." He pulled up old archives on his private terminal, scrolling through decades of classified reports. "Back in '48, he said, a deep-range probe picked up a similar echo near the Oort cloud. It vanished after 3 pulses. They called it a glitch, but I never believed that." He turned to Leo and Maya. "If this signal is real and if those coordinates mean something, then someone out there doesn't want to be found, and they definitely don't want us listening." The 3 of them looked at each other. They all knew what had to be done. There was an old probe stored in the lunar hangar, Odyssey 7-1. It had been built for a mission to study long-range cosmic rays but was shelved after budget cuts. It still worked, though. Its engines were cold, its systems dusty, but its sensors were top grade and it could be reprogrammed. Over the next 48 hours, they worked in secret. Leo rewired the navigation core. Maya loaded Echo's translation protocols into the probe's memory. Paul calculated the safest approach vector to avoid detection. They didn't tell anyone. Not Earth Command, not station security, not even their closest friends. If they were wrong, they'd be fired. If they were right, well, they weren't sure what would happen, but they had to know. The launch was quiet. No fanfare, no countdown. Just a soft hiss of thrusters as Odyssey 7 lifted from the lunar surface and vanished into the black. Leo watched it go from the observation deck, his hands clenched. Maya stood beside him, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. Paul stayed in the control room monitoring the first telemetry bursts. For 2 weeks, nothing. The probe traveled deeper into the outer system, sending back routine data. Then on the 15th day, it reached the coordinates. The feed changed instantly. Instead of empty space, the probe's long-range scanners picked up a massive object, ring-shaped, nearly 200 kilometers wide, orbiting a dead star so faint it barely registered on infrared. The structure was cloaked, bending light around it like a mirage, but Odyssey 7's quantum sensors saw through the illusion. Energy readings spiked. Gravitational distortions rippled through the area. This was no natural formation. It was built. Before Leo could even shout, the probe's signal stuttered. A pulse of unknown energy washed over it. Not destructive, but disabling. All systems froze except the emergency beacon. Then a new transmission played over the comms channel. It wasn't the original signal. This one was clearer, sharper. It spoke in Sumerian first, then Latin, then Sanskrit. Dozens of ancient Earth languages, one after another, each delivering the same message. Finally, it switched to modern English. You were not invited. The words hung in the air of the listening post like a cold breath. Leo's blood ran cold. Maya's face went pale. Paul gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles white. They had found something they weren't supposed to find, and now whoever was out there knew they were watching. Back on Earth, deep space defense satellites began detecting movement. Tiny blips appeared at the edge of the solar system. Ships, dozens of them, converging from unknown directions. None matched human design. None responded to hails. Global command centers lit up with alerts. Panic spread in hushed tones through secure channels. But in the quiet of the moon, 3 people stood in silence, staring at a screen that showed a ghost station in the void. They had uncovered a secret. And secrets, especially galactic ones, were never meant to stay hidden for long. Fortitude, the ghost station, hung in the darkness like a silent judge. From the frozen screens of the lunar deep space listening post, it looked ancient and impossible. Its ring shape smooth as glass, its surface shifting with faint pulses of blue light. The Odyssey 7 sun floated nearby, dead but intact, its last message echoing in the minds of everyone who had heard it. You were not invited. On Earth, confusion turned to fear. Military command centers scrambled. Scientists demanded answers. Politicians argued behind closed doors. But no one knew what to do. There were no protocols for first contact gone wrong, especially when the other side hadn't even said hello. Just a warning. Leo, Maya, and Paul watched the incoming data with growing dread. The alien ships spotted at the edge of the solar system weren't attacking. They weren't even moving toward Earth. They were gathering, forming a loose perimeter around the outer planets as if guarding something, or someone. It didn't take long for the truth to sink in. Humanity had stumbled onto a meeting, a secret one, and now the guests were angry. Paul spent hours cross-referencing every scrap of alien contact data ever recorded. Most of it was rumor or misidentified space junk, but a few files stood out. Whispers from deep space traders, encrypted logs from abandoned probes, even old myths from pre-spaceflight cultures that spoke of watchers in the void. None of it proved anything, but all of it pointed in the same direction. There was a council out there, a group that made rules for the galaxy, and humans weren't on the guest list. Maya worked on the signal again. She replayed the warning message, isolating each language. The fact that it used dead Earth tongues meant one thing: they knew about humanity. Not just our location, but our history. That was terrifying. It meant they'd been watching longer than anyone realized. Leo paced the narrow corridor outside the control room. He wasn't a soldier or a diplomat. He was just a technician who liked fixing things. But now, because of a stray signal and a gut feeling, he might have put the whole planet at risk. He kept thinking about the probe, floating helplessly near that massive ring. What if they decided to destroy it? What if they came for Earth next? Then a new alert flashed on the main screen. The alien ships had stopped moving. They formed a perfect circle around the ghost station. Something was happening. Back on Earth, the United Nations Emergency Council convened in secret. After days of debate, they made a decision. No weapons, no threats. Just a message of peace and a request to talk. But who would go? Sending a military ship would look like aggression. Sending nothing would look like fear. That's when they remembered the Aurora. It wasn't a warship. It was a civilian science vessel, designed for deep space research and long-duration missions. Small, unarmed, and painted white with blue stripes, it looked harmless. Exactly what they needed. The problem was crew. No trained astronaut would volunteer for a suicide mission into unknown alien territory, but Leo, Maya, and Paul didn't hesitate. They raised their hands before anyone else could speak. "We found it," Leo said simply. "We should be the ones to face it." The UN agreed. Within a week, the Aurora was prepped and fueled. Supplies were loaded. Communication systems were double-checked. Maya installed Echo's latest update, hoping it could help translate in real time. Paul packed old books on diplomacy, philosophy, and human history, just in case words failed. Leo checked every wire, every seal, every thruster. He wanted the ship to be perfect, not for glory, but for survival. The launch was quiet like the Odyssey 7s, no crowds, no speeches, just 3 people stepping into a capsule and leaving Earth behind. As the Aurora climbed through the atmosphere, Leo looked down at the blue planet one last time. He wondered if he'd ever see it again. The journey took 3 weeks. Time stretched long in the silence of space. They ate, slept, ran diagnostics, and talked about childhood's fears, favorite songs. Normal things to keep the fear at bay. Maya taught Paul how to play chess. Leo fixed a leak in the water recycler. They laughed sometimes, but the ghost station was always in their thoughts. When they finally neared the coordinates, they saw it with their own eyes. The ring station was even more massive up close. Its surface shimmered like oil on water, bending starlight around it. Dozens of alien ships hovered nearby, some sleek and needle-thin, others bulky and armored, a few shaped like living things. None moved as the Aurora approached. It was as if the whole system was holding its breath. Then a beam of soft light reached out from the station and touched the Aurora's hull. Not a weapon, a guide. The ship's controls went dead, but the vessel didn't shake or burn. Instead, it drifted gently toward a docking bay on the ring's inner rim. Inside the bay, the air was breathable, cool and dry, with a faint scent like rain on metal. Gravity felt normal. Lights glowed from the walls without visible sources. Everything was clean, precise, and utterly alien. Before they could step out, a figure appeared at the airlock door. Tall, with smooth gray skin and large black eyes, it wore a robe of woven silver threads. It didn't speak. It simply raised a 3-fingered hand and gestured for them to follow. They walked through wide corridors that curved upward like the inside of a seashell. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, shifting as they passed. Maya tried to record them, but her device wouldn't work. Paul noticed the architecture had no corners. Everything flowed into everything else, as if grown rather than built. Finally, they entered a vast chamber. In the center floated a circular platform. Around it stood dozens of beings, some insect-like, some reptilian, some made of light or crystal. All turned to look at the humans as they entered. At the far end of the room, a voice echoed, not through sound but directly in their minds. It was calm, deep, and heavy with age. "You have broken the silence," it said. "You were not ready. You were not chosen. And yet here you stand." Leo swallowed hard. Maya gripped Paul's arm. None of them knew what to say. Then the voice spoke again. "Explain why you should not be erased from this moment." The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. 3 humans, alone in a galaxy that never wanted them to wake up, had to answer for their entire species. And they had only one chance. Part 3. The chamber was silent but not empty. Every alien delegate watched the 3 humans with eyes that held centuries of judgment. Leo's heart pounded so loud he was sure they could hear it. Maya's breath came fast and shallow. Paul stood straight, his hands clasped behind his back, trying to look calm even though his mind raced. The voice that spoke in their heads belonged to a tall being with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that shimmered like distant galaxies. It stood at the center of the platform, surrounded by others who seemed to defer to it. This was Ambassador Krell of the Vorthon hegemony, Paul remembered from old intelligence briefs, though how he knew that name now he couldn't say. Maybe Echo had whispered it into his thoughts during the journey. "You trespassed," Krell said, his mental voice sharp as glass. "You listened where you were told not to. You saw what was hidden. For lesser species, this would mean immediate quarantine. For you, it may mean worse." Leo stepped forward before he could stop himself. "We didn't know," he said aloud, his voice rough but steady. "We heard a signal. We followed it. That's what humans do. We look, we listen, we ask questions." A ripple passed through the chamber. Some delegates shifted. Others made soft clicking or humming sounds. One creature with feathered limbs tilted its head as if amused. Curiosity is not an excuse, Krell replied. It is a danger. Your species has barely left your cradle. You still fight among yourselves. You poison your own world, and yet you dare to reach into affairs that could unmake you? Maya found her voice then. We also heal, she said. We build. We write songs about stars we've never seen. We send messages into the dark hoping someone will answer. Isn't that why you're here? To talk, to decide things together? Krell was silent for a long moment. Then another voice joined the mental chorus, softer, slower, like wind through trees. It came from a small robed figure near the back, its face hidden beneath a hood of woven light. The Terrans speak truth, it said. They are young, yes, but youth is not sin. It is potential. Paul recognized the species from fragmented records. The Zira collective, reclusive, ancient, rarely seen at galactic gatherings. Their very presence here was a surprise. Krell turned toward the Zira delegate. Potential for what? Chaos? War? They have not even unified their own world. How can they be trusted with knowledge that could shatter lesser minds? They unified enough to send these three, the Zira replied. Not soldiers. Not spies. Thinkers. Listeners. That is not nothing. The debate began then, not with shouting, but with waves of thought that washed over the humans like tides. Some delegates argued for immediate isolation of Earth. Others suggested memory wiping the trio and erasing all records of the signal. A few led by the Zira asked for patience. While the council argued, Leo looked around. He noticed something strange. The symbols on the walls weren't just decoration. They changed based on who was speaking. When Krell talked, sharp angles appeared. When the Zira spoke, the lines softened, curling like vines. Maya saw it too. She nudged Paul and pointed. Paul's eyes widened. It's a record, he whispered. This whole room is a living archive. He turned to the nearest wall and on impulse spoke aloud. My name is Paul Dawson. I am a scientist from Earth. We did not come to spy. We came because we heard a voice in the dark, and we hoped it was not alone. The wall shimmered. New symbols bloomed where his voice had touched the air. The council fell quiet. Even Krell seemed surprised. You speak to the stone memory? The Zira asked, its mental voice tinged with wonder. I didn't know I was, Paul admitted. But if this place remembers everything said here, then let it remember us too. A murmur spread through the chamber. For the first time, some of the delegates looked at the humans not as intruders but as participants. Back on Earth, time moved differently. News of the Aurora's arrival had leaked. Governments tried to control the story, but rumors flew faster than satellites. People gathered in streets, in homes, in temples and labs, all wondering what was happening at the edge of their world. Some prayed. Some panicked. Others simply watched the stars and hoped. Inside the station, the debate reached a turning point. Krell demanded a vote. Quarantine Earth, erase the signal and seal the system behind a veil of false data. The Zira proposed an alternative. Grant the humans a chance to speak for themselves, not as criminals but as witnesses. The council agreed, but only under strict terms. The humans would be allowed to present their case. 1 hour, no tricks, no appeals. If the majority still saw them as a threat, Earth would be cut off forever. Leo, Maya, and Paul were led to a smaller chamber, a quiet room with a single table and 3 chairs. A translator node floated in the center, pulsing gently. Prepare your words, the Zira told them through the node. Not just for your lives, for your world's future. They sat in silence for a while. Then Maya opened her pack and pulled out a small drive. I loaded everything, she said. Music, poetry, images of cities and forests, footage of people helping each other after disasters. Our math, our dreams, Paul nodded. And our mistakes. We shouldn't hide those. Leo looked at his hands. They think we're children playing with fire. Maybe we are. But we're also the only ones who keep trying to understand the flame. When the hour came, they returned to the main chamber. This time they didn't stand at the edge like beggars. They walked to the center where the platform hovered. The translator node floated beside them. Maya played the first file, a child's voice singing a lullaby in English. Then a symphony. Then a recording of a scientist explaining how stars are born. Paul spoke of human history, the wars, yes, but also the treaties, the art, the moments when enemies chose peace. Leo showed data from Earth's climate recovery efforts, from medical breakthroughs, from schools in war zones where children still learned to read. They didn't ask for mercy. They asked for a chance. When they finished, the council was still. Even Krell looked thoughtful. Then the Zira stood. You judge them by their age, it said to the others. But perhaps you should judge them by their courage. They came here knowing they might never return. Not for power, not for gain, but because they believed someone should listen. The vote was called. The delegates raised their hands, or tentacles, or light signals, or whatever passed for agreement in their species. The count was close, and when it ended, the result stunned everyone. The motion to quarantine Earth was denied. Instead, a new motion passed by the narrowest margin. The humans would be given one solar cycle, one Earth year, to prove they belonged among the stars, not as equals yet, but as observers, as possibilities. Leo let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Maya squeezed Paul's hand. They had bought time. Now they had to make it count. Part 4. The return to Earth felt heavier than the journey out. The aurora glided through the atmosphere like a falling leaf, silent and slow. Inside, Leo, Maya, and Paul sat in the dim light of the cockpit, staring at the blue curve of their home world. They had survived the council. They had spoken for humanity. And they had won a year, not a promise, but a chance. That was all. When they landed, no crowds waited. No cameras flashed. Only a small group of officials in plain clothes met them at the spaceport. They were taken to a secure facility beneath Geneva, deep underground, where the United Nations had built a quiet room for moments like this. The walls were soundproof. The air smelled of clean metal and old paper. For 3 days they told their story, not just to generals or politicians, but to scientists, teachers, artists, and engineers, people chosen not for power, but for wisdom. They played the recordings from the council chamber. They showed the shifting symbols of the stone memory. They explained the vote, the terms, the weight of what came next. Humanity had 1 year to prove it was more than chaos and noise. 1 year to show the galaxy that curiosity could lead to wisdom, not ruin. At first, governments argued. Some wanted to build weapons just in case. Others pushed for total secrecy, fearing panic. But then something unexpected happened. News of the council's trial leaked, not through spies, but through a technician who whispered to a friend, who told a journalist, who posted it online. Within hours, the whole world knew. Instead of fear, something else spread. Hope, pride, a strange, quiet unity. People began to act differently. In cities, neighbors cleaned parks together. In labs, rivals shared data freely. Schools added lessons on ethics, cooperation, and cosmic responsibility. Musicians wrote songs about the ring station. Painters filled canvases with visions of alien skies. Even old enemies paused their wars, if only to ask, what if we're being watched? Leo, Maya, and Paul became quiet advisors. They didn't give orders. They asked questions. What would the Zira think of this? Maya would say during budget meetings. Would Krell see this as proof we've grown? Paul would ask before new laws were passed. Leo fixed broken systems, not just machines, but supply chains, communication networks, anything that helped people work together. The UN formed a new body, the Earth Continuity Group. Its job wasn't to rule, but to prepare. They gathered the best of human culture, books, films, equations, recipes, dance routines, even children's drawings, and stored them in a vault on the moon, just in case. They also built a new ship, small and fast, designed not for war but for listening. They called it the Harken. Meanwhile, the alien ships remained at the edge of the solar system. They didn't move closer. They didn't speak. But they watched. Sensors on Earth picked up faint energy pulses, like someone checking in quietly. 6 months passed. Then 9. The world held its breath. Then a message came, not through radio, not through light. It arrived in the dreams of children. In the static between TV channels, in the hum of power lines at dawn. It was short, simple, and unmistakable. The time nears. The council was coming back. Panic flickered but didn't spread. People remembered what they'd built in the last year. They remembered they weren't alone in this, not just with each other, but with Leo, Maya, and Paul, who had stood in that chamber and spoken truth. The Harken was ready. This time the crew was larger. 12 people from 12 different nations, all trained not just in science but in empathy. Leo would pilot. Maya would handle translation. Paul would speak for Earth's history. The others brought music, medicine, stories, and seeds from every continent. They launched on a clear night, stars sharp in the sky. As the ship rose, people around the world turned off their lights for 1 minute, a silent show of unity. From space, Earth went dark, then slowly lit up again like a heartbeat. The journey to the ring station was faster this time. The alien ships parted as the Harken approached, as if expecting it. The same silver-robed guide met them at the docking bay. This time it bowed its head slightly. Inside the chamber, the council was already gathered. Krell stood in the same place, arms crossed. The Zira sat nearby, hood lowered, revealing a face like woven starlight. Dozens of other species filled the room, their forms as strange and varied as ever. Leo stepped forward first. "We came back," he said simply. "You were told to," Krell replied, but his voice lacked its old sharpness. "No," Maya said. "We chose to, just like last time." Paul held up a small crystal, a data core containing everything humanity had done in the past year. "We didn't just wait," he said. "We grew." The Zira floated closer. "Show us." And so they did. They played recordings of global cleanup efforts. They showed how diseases had been cured through shared research. They displayed art made by former enemies working side by side. They even included a live feed from Earth, millions of people standing outside at that very moment looking up at the stars, holding candles or lanterns, not in fear, but in greeting. Krell watched it all in silence. When it ended, he turned to the Zira. "They are still young," he said. "But they learn fast," the Zira nodded. "Faster than we did." Then it turned to the humans. "The Council does not give gifts, but it honors effort. You have not yet earned a seat among us, but you have earned the right to keep trying." A murmur of agreement rose through the chamber. Krell stepped forward. "One more test remains," he said. "Not of your past, but of your future. A threat moves through the galaxy, one that does not speak, does not reason. It consumes worlds and leaves silence. We have argued for cycles on how to stop it. You say you wish to belong? Then help us decide." Leo looked at Maya. Maya looked at Paul. They understood. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about responsibility. Paul spoke for all of them. "Tell us what you know. We'll listen. And we'll help." The council watched as the humans stepped fully into the circle, not as guests, but as partners. The real test had just begun. Part 5, where the threat had no name. The council called it the Hollow, a wave of silence moving through the galaxy, swallowing stars, planets, even time itself. Where it passed, nothing remained. Not ruins, not echoes, just empty space, as if those places had never existed. Some thought it was a weapon. Others believed it was alive. No one knew for sure, and no one could stop it. For weeks, the Harken stayed docked at the ring station while Leo, Maya, and Paul studied everything the council would share. Data streams, star charts, failed missions, last transmissions from lost worlds all poured into Echo's core. The AI worked day and night, searching for patterns. At first, there were none. The Hollow struck at random. No warning, no trace. But then Maya noticed something. Every world it consumed had one thing in common. They were all alone. Not just physically, but culturally. They had stopped listening to others. They had turned inward, built walls, trusted no one. Isolation, it seemed, made them vulnerable. She shared this with Paul, who remembered Earth's own history, how wars, pandemics, and disasters had nearly broken humanity, but connection had saved it. "Maybe the Hollow feeds on silence," he said. "Not sound, but the silence between beings who refuse to understand each other." Leo tested the idea. He asked the council for records of systems that had been near the Hollow but survived. There were 3. Each had one trait in common. They were part of tight-knit alliances, constantly sharing knowledge, resources, even art. They talked. They listened. They remembered they were not alone. The Zira listened carefully when the humans presented their theory. "You suggest the Hollow is not a force of destruction," it said, "but a consequence of disconnection." "Maybe," Leo replied. "Or maybe it's a test. The universe's way of asking, do you still care about each other?" Krell, who had once wanted Earth quarantined, now stood silent for a long time. Then he spoke. "If you are right, then fighting the Hollow with weapons is useless. It must be met with something stronger." "Like what?" Maya asked. "Like unity," Paul said softly. The council agreed to try something new. Instead of hiding or attacking, they would build a beacon, not of power but of connection. A signal that carried not just data but stories, songs, memories, and hopes from every species in the Alliance. A message that said we are here and we are together. Earth's contribution was simple but powerful. They sent a live broadcast from every continent. Children laughing, elders teaching, farmers planting, doctors healing, musicians playing. Not perfect, not polished, just real. And in the center of it all, a single phrase repeated in every human language. We see you. We hear you. You are not alone. The beacon was launched from the ring station. It pulsed outward in waves of light and sound, weaving through space like a thread of gold. For days nothing happened. Then near the edge of known space the hollow slowed. It didn't vanish. But it turned, not toward the nearest world but away, from the signal, from the noise of togetherness. It moved into the deeper dark where silence still ruled. The council watched in awe. No weapon had fired. No ship had fought. Just voices joined. Krell turned to the humans. You did not defeat it, he said, but you changed its path. That's all we can do sometimes, Leo replied. Change the path. The vote came the next day. Not in secret, not in haste, but in full view of every delegate, every observer, every species watching from afar. The motion was simple. Grant Earth full provisional membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities. It passed unanimously. No cheers erupted. No celebrations. But something deeper happened. The humans were no longer outsiders. They were part of the conversation. As the Harkin prepared to return home, the Zira gave Paul a small stone, smooth, warm to the touch, etched with a single symbol, two hands reaching toward each other. This is the first word of our language, it said. It means together. Maya hugged the being gently, surprising even herself. Leo shook hands, or what passed for hands, with Krell, who gave a stiff but sincere nod. You are still young, he said, but you grow fast. Back on Earth, the news spread quietly. No grand announcement. Just a message sent to every screen, every radio, every school and home. We belong. People didn't riot. They didn't cheer. They simply looked at each other, then at the sky, and smiled. In the months that followed, Earth changed. Not all at once, but steadily. Old borders mattered less. New projects began. Shared farms on Mars, joint ocean cleanups, global classrooms where children learned alien languages alongside their own. The Harkin became a school ship, training the next generation of human ambassadors. Leo stayed on the moon, helping build a new listening post, one designed not to spy, but to share. Maya traveled the world teaching others how to listen deeply, not just to words, but to silence between them. Paul wrote a book, not about aliens, but about kindness across difference. And far away at the edge of the galaxy, the ring station remained. But now one small section bore a new symbol, a circle with many lines inside it, each different, all connected. It was Earth's mark, not of conquest, not of fear, but of presence. The galaxy had thought humans were too young to understand, too loud, too messy, too human. But that was exactly why they were needed, because in a universe full of perfect beings, it was the flawed ones who remembered to reach out a hand, and sometimes that was enough.